Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody? Good morning and welcome in to the Philly Sports Power Hour on the official day of the NFL legal tampering window, opening up at 12 o'clock. I feel like a little kid on Christmas Eve, going to bed for Christmas morning. One of my favorite times of the year. Outside of the games themselves, obviously, this is one of my favorite times of year as a football fan. Because now we can officially close the book on the 2023 season and the way it ended and everything we disagree about. Who was at fault? Who should have been fired? Done. Time to look forward now. Time to get excited with the Philadelphia Eagles sitting here with $43 million. $43 million to spend today. Let's see what Howie Roseman does. So obviously we're going to spend a lot of time talking NFL free agency as we get ready for the legal tampering window. And then a lot of news over the weekend. We know Brandon Graham has decided to come back for another year. We know Fletcher Cox, as expected, is hanging them up. And now reports that not only are the Philadelphia Eagles accepting calls on their one starting edge rusher, Haason Reddick, they're accepting calls on their other starting edge rusher, Josh Sweat. So what does all of that mean for this Philadelphia Eagles team? Should be a fun couple days. It should be a fun couple days. That is for sure. But we're going to dive into everything. We'll do a little Sixers. Little Flyers as well. So let's get a roll call in the chat. We're streaming live on JAKIB Sports. We're also live across all my social channels. Bill Colarulo, Philly Sports Talk. We're here live on TikTok. What's up to my TikTok crew checking in? Appreciate all of you. But let's see who's in the house today. I see a lot of people checking in. Right out of the gate, my man, Wine Niners Wine. Appreciate that. Says I'm crushing it on 97.5 The Fanatic. I appreciate that. Flexing and stepping in the house. Bry Guy. Adams Exploits. Jim G. Chwiz. Solvane. Thaddeus. Rob. David Laprati. Decoy Gaiman. Mike Fittery. Matt Beach. Big Willie in the house. Who else we got? James Jones. Bobby Murphy. Isaiah. Man, there's a bunch of people checking in today. I apologize if I missed you, but I'm happy you are here. Let's get some people checking in on TikTok as well. Diego in the house. See a lot of people checking in today. Everybody's interested again. And there's my girl, Bridget Tobin. Always checking in. Biggest fan. All right, let's talk about Fletcher Cox. Probably the biggest news from the weekend. Fletcher Cox has decided to hang him up and retire. This was something we all expected. The way the players were talking, the way Jordan Davis was talking after the season, we knew Fletch cleaned out his locker. So we were kind of expecting this. But let's reflect on his career, because Fletcher Cox, one of the best defensive players to ever wear a Philadelphia Eagles uniform. And I think sometimes, as football fans, we don't appreciate the defensive tackle position, because the defensive tackle sometimes isn't the ones making all the big plays. Not the guy making the sacks usually, although Fletch was able to do that. Not the guy who's really stopping the run. Sometimes the defensive tackle's job is to take on all the blockers to allow your linebacker to make the plays. So I think Fletch was good enough that a lot of us appreciated him, but I'm not sure if we appreciated him enough because he really was that good. And not only was he one of the best defensive players in Philadelphia Eagles history, probably one of their best draft picks on the defensive side of the football, especially when you look back over the last 20 years. Eagles haven't done a great job drafting defensive players. That's something they've severely lacked, is drafting defensive players. So when you look at Fletch, one of the best draft picks they've ever had. So he plays 12 seasons, gets drafted in 2012, first round, number 12 overall. Just like Jason Kelce, gets the phone call from Big Red Andy Reid. He plays 12 seasons. Obviously, the biggest season, 2017, Super Bowl 52 champ. But he was a 6-time Pro Bowler, most ever by a Philadelphia Eagles defensive tackle, 4-time All-Pro, the All-Decade team in the 2010s for the NFL. Played 188 regular season games, the most ever by a defensive tackle in Philadelphia Eagles franchise history. Third most ever, third to only Jason Kelce and Brandon Graham. 70 sacks, and I talked about how the defensive tackles don't usually get the sacks as much as your edge rushers do. Well, he had 70 sacks. That's the most all-time by any defensive tackle in Eagles franchise history. It's 5th overall. Brandon Graham, 4th with 73. Clyde Simmons, 3rd with 76. Trent Cole, 2nd with 85.5. And then obviously Reggie White, 124. So Fletcher Cox announces his retirement. And we'll get into Brandon Graham in a second. But let's talk quickly about now, what does this mean for the Philadelphia Eagles? What do the Philadelphia Eagles now do? Let's first start on the field. What do they do at the defensive tackle position? Well, when you look at that defense, there are so many holes on the defensive side of the football. Linebacker, safety. I know some people are more concerned about corner than I am, but now edge rusher, with the reports that maybe they're trading both, which we'll get into in a second. But the one position that I don't worry is defensive tackle. That's the one position where Howie Roseman has actually done a decent job of drafting. So as well as Fletcher Cox played last year, and he really did turn back the clock, him and Jason Kelce both retire playing at an extremely high level, both of them. But Fletcher Cox played great last year. But even though he played great, I still think that we are okay, that the Philadelphia Eagles are okay with the defensive tackles they currently have on the roster. And I see people talking about Eric Armstead, who's going to be released from San Francisco. And let's digress for 1 second. This is what I was talking about. If you were here, you watched the show, you follow me a couple of weeks ago, after the 49ers lost the Super Bowl in devastating fashion, I told you that the window for the 49ers is closing, and I couldn't enjoy it more because they are in a really tough spot with the cap. And I had all these 49ers fans coming out after me. Oh, we're carrying over all this money. It didn't matter. Even carrying over all that money, even with the salary cap going up, you were still in cap hell with negative $238,000. Philadelphia Eagles, $43 million. The 49ers, negative $238,000. So this is what I was talking about. So now they had to cut Eric Armstead. They're going to have to figure out what they're doing with Brandon Ayuk at wide receiver. You guys are in trouble. Where's my 49ers troll that's always here in the chat? Where's he at? So this is what I was talking about, but I don't want Eric Armstead. Listen, if you listen to Howie Roseman, and I want to talk about this again when we talk about Josh Sweat and Haason Reddick. When he spoke at the Combine a couple of weeks ago now, everybody assumed that he wasn't giving us anything. Everybody assumed that, oh, it's just Howie Roseman being Howie Roseman. He didn't give us anything. Big Sills on the show was saying basically he was mumbling. Well, maybe, just maybe, Howie Roseman was actually telling us the truth. Because if you go back and you listen to what Howie Roseman said, he talked about wanting to play young players. He went as far as even saying, when the coaches look at the depth chart, they may be a little bit uncomfortable because the guys that are going to be there may not have done it before, but we have a lot of faith in those guys because we drafted them. I think he meant what he said. And when you look at the defensive tackle position, I think the guys who are going to fill the void of Fletcher Cox are already here. We know Jalen Carter has the potential to be an absolute stud in this league. We saw it for about the first 3 quarters of the season before he hit the proverbial rookie wall. But I'm okay with the D-tackle position because you have not only Jalen Carter, you have Milton Williams. And we'll talk about Jordan Davis in a second. But Milton Williams is a stud, in my opinion. I think we've seen Milton Williams get better every single season. Now, he's a guy they have to extend. He's in the final year of his deal. He's eligible for a new contract because he's played 3 full seasons in the NFL. He's still only 24 years old. Milton Williams will not be 25 until April. And I think that kid is an absolute stud in this league. And that may be the only thing that me and Big Sills agree upon is that Milton Williams is a really good defensive tackle. So me and Big Sills disagree on a lot, but we agree on Milton Williams. So I'm expecting a big role for Milton Williams next season now that Fletcher Cox has called it a career. I got people on TikTok coming after me, 49ers fans. I don't care that Eric Armstead's missed a bunch of games. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this is what you're going to start to see in San Francisco because your cap is an absolute mess. So you're going to have to start getting rid of players. You can't pay everybody. Brock Purdy's going to be eligible for a new deal after this season. So enjoy it. Enjoy the window closing because we're going to enjoy watching it. But I'm excited for Milton Williams. I'm excited for Jalen Carter next year to step up. But there's also other guys on this roster. I know Jordan Davis is a player that a lot of people are out on. I'm not one of them. I still am hopeful that Jordan Davis, who is only 24 years old himself, he won't be 25 until when the season's ending in January. So I think sometimes we're too quick to write off players who are young. So you have Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, and there's 2 other guys that are nice depth pieces that can play. Marlon Tuipulotu, we saw him make some plays. And you have Moro Ujomo, who was the 7th-round rookie last year. So I think the defensive tackle position is the one position on that defense that shouldn't be a question mark in the offseason. Now, do they pick up a player? Maybe. But that shouldn't be the priority. The priority should not be defensive tackle. That's where we're fine. Now, let's stick with the defensive line for a second. Because even though we are fine at D tackle, in my opinion, what the hell are they doing on the edge? What the hell are the Philadelphia Eagles going to do with the edge rusher position? Because now it's being reported that not only did they give permission to Haason Reddick to seek a trade, they're now accepting calls on Josh Sweat. I would be okay if they traded Josh Sweat, but you have to keep Haason Reddick. You have to. You can't trade both of these guys. You just can't do it. Look, we saw last year how important the pass rush is, and we know this. Anyone who watches football knows how important the pass rush is. But let's just look. In 2022, when they had 70 sacks, the Philadelphia Eagles had the #1 pass defense in the entire NFL. No coincidence. You lead the NFL in sacks, they lead the NFL in pass defense. Well, then they come back last season in 2023, 70 sacks, drops all the way down to 43 sacks. And what did you see happen to your pass defense? You went from number 1 in the NFL to number 31. That's insane. They dropped 30 spots in pass defense. Now, a lot of that was the changes at safety. A lot of that was James Bradbury falling off a cliff. But at the same time, that front four, that pass rush in 2022 makes up for a lot of mistakes on the back end. And as we're talking about the 49ers, as much as I can't stand Deebo Samuel and all the trash talking he did, if you remember after the NFC Championship game last year, 2 years ago, he said secondary was trash. And when he got asked about it and pressed a little bit, he said their pass rush makes up for a lot. Maybe Deebo was right. Maybe Deebo was on to something. So you go into this season right now, if you were to trade both Reddick and Sweat, what the hell do you have? If you guys follow me, you know, even before the talk of Reddick and Sweat potentially being traded, I was talking about how they needed to add more pieces at the edge. I had that as a major need on this team, even with those two guys, because you saw what happened last season. When Sweat played a career high 828 snaps last year, which was almost 300 more than he played the year before, he hit a freaking wall. He went 8 straight games to end the season without a sack. So I wanted more depth because once they cut Derek Barnett last year, you saw that this team didn't have anything. They didn't have any help on the edge. BG, love him. Great leader, great guy, both on and off the field. We love BG. He's giving you about 25% of the snaps. He's not the answer on the edge. They brought him back 1 year, $4 million. Great. It's his swan song. Congratulations, BG. You're going to have played the most seasons in franchise history. You're crushing the most games ever in franchise history. Love you. He's not going to give you much. So you need depth on the edge. Even if you brought back Reddick and Sweat, you need help. So now they're thinking about trading both of these guys? That I don't understand at all. Now listen, a lot of this is business. A lot of this is negotiation. So could this just be, hey, Reddick, go out there, see what you're worth, come back, we'll figure something out. I'd actually feel pretty good if they brought back Reddick and they traded Josh Sweat. Now, Josh Sweat's only 26 years old. He'll be 27 the end of the month. He looks a lot older. He drags that leg around, man. Seth Joyner says it all the time. If he didn't have that knee injury, that Josh Sweat would probably be the best pass rusher in the entire NFL. But even though Josh Sweat's only going to be 27 at the end of the month, I think he's playing a lot older. You saw him hit a wall last year when he played 800 snaps. And that's not the first time that we've seen Josh Sweat go stretches without sacks. I went back and looked. In 2020, he had 6 sacks in 14 games. 9 out of 14 games, he didn't have a sack. He went 5 games in a row without a sack in 2020. 2021, he had 7.5 sacks. He went 10 games without a sack, 4 games in a row. 2022, 11 sacks. Career year last year for him. I keep saying last year, 2022, because now we can refer to 2023 as last year. But 2022, he has 11 sacks in 16 games. In half the games, 8 out of 16 games, he didn't have a sack. He went 5 games in a row without a sack. And now this past year, 2023, the last 8 games of the year without a sack. You can't have that from one of your best edge rushers, especially when you played 828 snaps in 17 games. You only have 6.5 sacks, and you go 10 games out of 17 without a sack. So I would be okay if they traded Josh Sweat. And the other issue, too, when you look at the contract, Josh Sweat's in the final year of his deal. So his cap hit also jumps because pretty much every single contract Howie Roseman does goes up in the end. So you look at Josh Sweat's contract. In 2023, he was a $5.8 million hit. That jumps to 9.1. But here's where it gets hairy. If you do anything pre-June 1st, it actually costs you more money. It would have a $14.5 million cap hit. Post-June 1st, you're saving $4.5 million on the cap. So same thing with Reddick. Final year of his deal, you're not saving a lot of money if you move on from him pre-June 1st. It's got to be post-June 1st. So I think if they do anything with either one of those guys, the contract that gets structured at the new team, because there's no way either one of these guys is probably going to a new team on a trade unless a new deal is entered into, because they're both in the final year of their deal. So maybe you get some cap relief. But I'd be okay trading Sweat, but I think you have to keep Reddick. And when I talked about Howie Roseman maybe meaning what he said at the Combine when he was talking about young players, and maybe a player who hasn't proven it yet, Nolan Smith jumps right up to the top. Because he was even asked about Nolan Smith, and he said, he's one of the guys I mean when we talk about playing our young players. And then he went on to talk about how good Nolan Smith looked in that playoff game. So do the Philadelphia Eagles think that Nolan Smith is ready to step up and be one of the starters on the edge? Because that's how it's looking to me. If you're considering trading Haason Reddick, you're considering trading Josh Sweat, and you're taking both of your starting edge rushers from last year, I'm starting to see the writing on the wall here that maybe your starting edge rusher next year, one of them, is Nolan Smith. And as high as I was on Nolan Smith coming out of college, and even though I'm not ready to rule him out, I don't feel comfortable going into this season with Nolan Smith as one of the answers on the edge. A depth piece, a rotational piece to see what he's got, and maybe he grows into a stud edge rusher in this league. Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm not giving up on him. But you can't go into this season with Nolan Smith as one of your starters and thinking that that's going to be the answer. We've seen this movie before. They did this with Nakobe Dean, where we only saw Nakobe Dean in his rookie season 34 snaps. And then the Philadelphia Eagles put all of their hopes at linebacker on Nakobe Dean. I was saying it all damn offseason. You can't do that. We don't know what we have in Nakobe Dean. You can't do that. You can't rely on him. Just like I'm saying with Nolan Smith. I wasn't ruling out Nakobe Dean. I had hopes he was going to be a good player. But you can't rely on a guy that you haven't seen perform yet. And then you look at Nolan Smith, similar situation. Now, he played a little bit more than Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean played 34 snaps his rookie season. Nolan Smith played 200 snaps last year. And even though there were some signs, and I say some, and I'm using that kind of liberally here because I think there was a lot more to be worried about than to be excited about. So although there were some signs that Nolan Smith can step up and grow into being a very good edge in this league, I didn't see enough that you can go into this season and say, yeah, let's have him as a starter. Now, free agency kicks off today. Legal tampering kicks off today at 12 o'clock. So we're going to dive in because there are other reports of edge rushers that the Philadelphia Eagles may be interested in, and we'll talk about it. But the problem I see is I think you needed one of these edge rushers even if you brought back Reddick and Sweat. You needed one of these edge rushers. So I can't imagine them going out, trading Reddick, trading Sweat, and signing two big-name edge rushers. So I'm starting to believe that what Howie Roseman told us at the Combine, although we all wrote it off as he didn't tell us shit, that he was actually tipping his hand a little bit about what their plan is and that they're going to lean on a lot of young guys that they drafted because they believe in them in 2024. So when we get back, we'll talk about some edge rushers that are being reported that the Eagles may be interested in when the legal tampering period kicks off today at 12 o'clock. Also want to talk about some other positions that I think they may be targeting in free agency. And then we'll revisit the whole Saquon Barkley rumor that doesn't seem to be going away. We'll talk about that as well. So should be an exciting few days. Let's hope. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I curse? Roast Pork Italian said his son's watching. I apologize. I never curse on this show. Oh, I said S-H-I-T. My apologies, Roast Pork Italian son. Don't use language like that. I'll keep it PG. My apologies. I usually don't do that. But when we get back, we'll jump into some free agency. We'll talk about the Barkley rumor that doesn't seem to be going away. And then we'll do a little Sixers, little Flyers. And I'll give you, like we do every Power Hour today in sports history. So hit that like button for me. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back in to the Philly Sports Power Hour. We take the break on YouTube. We were still live on TikTok getting some questions. So a lot of people on TikTok talking about the Saquon Barkley rumor. We'll get into that because that rumor doesn't seem to be going away. Depends on who you ask. Some people are saying that it's not accurate. Others are saying it is accurate. I've reached out to a few people who are telling me it is accurate, that they are interested in a Saquon Barkley, which makes sense. But we'll talk about that. First, I want to talk and continue our conversation about the edge rusher position, because I just can't believe, and I'm still not believing that they would trade both of these guys. Maybe I will be wrong. Maybe they turn around and they do, in fact, trade Haason Reddick and Josh Sweat. That would shock me. That would absolutely shock me, because I know there are a lot of people, and I just did a video about this on my Instagram and my TikTok. Make sure you're following. And on Twitter. And I had people commenting saying Eagles are going into a rebuild. I'm not buying that at all. I'm not buying that this team is entering a rebuild. I don't see how you would be in a rebuild when you have a $255 million quarterback, when you have two of the best wide receivers in the NFL in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. You still have Dallas Goedert. You still have one of the best offensive lines. I know it takes a big hit losing Jason Kelce, but you still have Jordan Mailata, who I'm expecting him with another year at Stoutland University to be even better next year. You still have Lane Johnson, one of the best right tackles in the NFL. You have Landon Dickerson, Pro Bowler, at left guard. And you have Cam Jurgens, who's going to move over to center, which is his natural position. And I think a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised with Cam Jurgens at center. So really, you have two holes on offense. Right guard and running back. Yeah, they need to upgrade wide receiver 3. You can do that. Yeah, I'd like to see a backup tight end. Reports are they're going to let Jack Stoll explore free agency. Who cares? So I don't see how you're rebuilding when you have an offense that good. Now, I would say if you were in a cap situation like the San Francisco 49ers are, where they're negative right now going into free agency, okay, because now we really can't rebuild that defense. They have $43 million to spend. So how are we in a rebuild when you have pretty much your entire offense coming back? You have $43 million to spend to build your defense back. You brought in Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator. You brought in Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator. So I'm not buying that this is a rebuild at all. And I see Ringo Island saying total rebuild because he's talking about the defense. Look, the one positive here is it's a lot easier to bring in a bunch of pieces on your defensive side of the football and have them gel quickly than it would be on your offense. I think it's a lot more difficult to bring in offensive pieces and try to get them to gel quickly. It's not as hard on defense. Like, let's look at what their needs are. So I just told you I'm okay with the defensive tackle position. They need linebackers. There's no doubt about it. They need linebackers. So I will agree that this would be a rebuild if Howie Roseman doesn't go out there in the next 3 days and make a big splash at linebacker. Same thing with safety. They need a safety. But if this team this week is able to get, I'm going to give you my dream scenarios, and you know this if you follow the show. If they were able to get Patrick Queen at linebacker, Xavier McKinney at safety, and maybe a Bryce Huff on the edge, and you kept Haason Reddick, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, they'll fill in some other roles. They'll still bring in players. And we can talk about, I talked about it this weekend on The Fanatic, how you have to be patient because a lot of the moves that the team will make won't happen this week. But I need to see the Philadelphia Eagles make some splashes this week at those positions. Edge rusher, linebacker, safety. They make those splashes this week. They bring in a guy like Bryce Huff, Patrick Queen, Xavier McKinney. They keep Haason Reddick. Now you fill in. Now you fill in the other positions. You could get a wide receiver 3 in the second wave of free agency. You can get some offensive line help. Hell, you could even get a running back in the second wave of free agency because we know the running back market isn't going to materialize. It never does. This isn't the NFL of the 90s. And I went through these names with you last week of all of the players, all of the running backs who didn't get those big deals last year. So we'll talk about Barkley in a second, but I'm not buying that this is a rebuild at all. And I see people saying I'm taking shots at Nolan Smith. I'm not taking shots at Nolan Smith. What I'm saying is you can't rely on him. Just like you couldn't rely on the Kobe Dean. It doesn't mean that I don't think Nolan Smith is going to become a good player in this league. That doesn't mean that. What I'm saying is you can't go into this season and assume that he's going to be a good player in this league. There's a difference. I'm not down on Nolan Smith. I'm not giving up on Nolan Smith. What I'm saying is you can't assume that he's going to be good and he's going to be the answer on your team next year. So let's look at Bryce Huff because he's a free agent name that I keep hearing the Philadelphia Eagles may be interested in. There's a lot to like about him. 25 years old. Projected contract, 3 years, $50 million. It's not going to break the bank. 6'1", 254, undrafted out of Memphis in 2020. Now, the positive with him is his pass rushing ability. The negative with him is his run stopping ability. He's also had some injuries. Now, last year he bounced back. He played all 17 games. But you look at 2022, only 14 games. 2021, only 9 games. His rookie season, only 14 games. But you look at his pass rushing ability, and let's look at the Pro Football Focus grades here for a second. Rookie year, he had a 62 grade. Sophomore year, 71. Third year, an 88. And this past year, an 87 pass grade. You look at all of the pass rushers in the NFL. Bryce Huff was number 9 when it came to the Pro Football Focus grade of pass rush. Here's the players who were in front of him. Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, TJ Watt, Aiden Hutchinson, Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati, Andrew Van Ginkel, which is a name we need to talk about, Josh Allen from Jacksonville, and then Bryce Huff. Haason Reddick was a 34. He was ranked 34th. Bryce Huff was 9. But then you look a little deeper at the numbers, and you look at Bryce Huff's win rate in terms of pass rush. 22.9% win rate. Now, what does that mean? Let's put that into perspective. The 22.9% win rate for Bryce Huff was third best in the NFL. There were 2 players in the entire league that had a higher win rate on pass rush. Do you know who they are? Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett, was number 1. And Micah Parsons was number 2. And then Bryce Huff. So that's exciting. You're talking about a guy with the third best win rate on pass rush in the entire NFL. So you added a guy like Bryce Huff and you keep Haason Reddick. Now I feel okay on the edge. Now I'm not as upset about leaning on Nolan Smith a little bit next year as your third option off the bench. Bryce Huff, Haason Reddick are your starters. You have Nolan Smith. You have Brandon Graham. And maybe you add another piece. And that's where the name Andrew Van Ginkel pops up. Now, Van Ginkel's a little bit older. How old is Van Ginkel now? I think I have this number. How old's Van Ginkel? You guys probably have it before I do. Let me see. I think he may be getting a little bit older. He may be 29. Andrew Van Ginkel, yeah, he's 28. He'll be 29 when the season starts. He was born in July. So I don't know what he's going to require as far as pay. But if you could get him, we saw how successful he was in the Vic Fangio scheme. Well, now I'm feeling a little bit better on the edge. So that's why I need to see the Eagles make some splashes over the next 3 days. Get those players like a Bryce Huff, young. I'm not buying it that it's a rebuild, but I don't want these 30 and older guys anymore. I don't want these retreads anymore. I want the young 24, 25-year-old players that they can sign to a nice 4-year contract, 3 or 4 year deal, and now we can really grow on that defense, all while these guys can contribute. It's not a rebuild. You're locking up the core of your defense for the next 3 or 4 years. So here are some of the names at safety that I like. Xavier McKinney, 24. If you can't get him, Cameron Curl from the Washington Commanders, 24 years old. Geno Stone, Baltimore Ravens, 24 years old. Chauncey Gardner Johnson, 26. And I've told you, I'm okay with Chauncey Gardner Johnson, but he can't be the only answer. Bring in Chauncey Gardner Johnson, but also give me a McKinney or a Curl or a Geno Stone. Because Chauncey Gardner Johnson's another guy who really can't stay healthy. But if Howie can somehow pull off a Bryce Huff, a Patrick Queen, an Xavier McKinney, Chauncey Gardner Johnson, I'm feeling pretty good. See, what I like about Chauncey Gardner Johnson is he has the ability to play slot corner as well. We saw him do it when Avonte Maddox got hurt that Super Bowl season. You saw Chauncey Gardner Johnson drop down. Now, I see people on TikTok talking about Jeremy Chin, 26 years old. For me, Chin would be if you miss out on those other 3 guys. If you can't get a McKinney, a Curl, or a Stone, then I'd be okay with a Jeremy Chin. Maybe even a Jordan Fuller. But the Jordan Poyers and the Justin Simmons and even the Jamal Adams of the world, I don't want them. I don't want players that age anymore. And I know Jamal Adams is only 28, but again, he's a guy like Josh Sweat who's older than his years. But I like that Chauncey Gardner Johnson can play the slot. And if you follow me, you know I'm not as down on the secondary from the cornerback position as a lot of people are. A lot of people think they need to go out and get a corner. I don't think you need to break the bank for a corner. And I've said this on this show before, and I think I'm in the minority. I put that at number 4 on the list on defense. I'm putting linebacker, safety, and edge rusher as priorities before corner. Because for me, I like a lot of the young guys in that cornerback room. I'm a big fan of Keely Ringo. I'm a big fan of Zach McPherson. A lot of people at the Eagles organization were expecting big things from Zach McPherson last year. And guess what position they had him playing? Nickel corner. And then he blew out his Achilles in training camp. So you have Keely Ringo, you have Zach McPherson, and you have Isaiah Rodgers, who I keep telling you about was one of the best corners in the league in Indianapolis the year before he got suspended. I don't think I have his Pro Football Focus grades in front of me now. I had him before. But Zach McPherson, Isaiah Rodgers, Keely Ringo, and you still have Darius Slay. So for me, I'm okay with the corners. Just looking to see if I have those numbers. I may not have them in front of me, but Isaiah Rodgers, hold on, I think I have them over here. I gave them to you last week. Here we go. Isaiah Rodgers in 2022, before he was suspended for the 2023 season, He had a grade of 82.1. There were only 4 corners in the entire NFL with a higher Pro Football Focus grade. Sauce Gardner, Patrick Surtain II, Jalen Ramsey, and Duke Shelley. That's it. And I know a lot of people are floating this, that Isaiah Rodgers is going to play slot corner, and I've talked to John McMullen about it. John McMullen said the only reason he didn't play slot corner in Indianapolis is because they already had one. But I think Isaiah Rodgers could be your starter on the outside. So now you have 3 potential starters at outside corner, because Isaiah Rodgers has primarily played on the outside. He's never played in the slot, like ever in Indianapolis. So now you have Darius Slay, you have Keely Ringo, you have Isaiah Rodgers, and you got Zach McPherson coming back. You still have Eli Ricks, who battled last year and showed us some things. So I'm not buying that that's a need on this team. Do you maybe get some depth? Sure. But I'm okay with the cornerbacks. Isaiah Rodgers is essentially like picking up a free agent. See, that's the thing that people forget. Just because they got him last year and he was suspended, if they went out and news got reported today that the Philadelphia Eagles signed one of the best cornerbacks in free agency, Isaiah Rodgers, everybody would be excited. It's essentially what they already did. They got him last year. I get on Howie Roseman for the way he built this defense last year, but that was a great move. So I'm okay with the corners. It's the other positions. It's the edge rushers, the linebackers, the safeties. Corner, defensive tackle, Eagles are okay. But then let's jump over to the other side of the football, because one of the needs is obviously running back. And we talked about this on the show last week a little bit, but people are asking about it, so let's jump back into it. I talked about it on the radio at length this weekend. The rumors are true. The Philadelphia Eagles are interested in running back Saquon Barkley. That is true. Now, will the price be right? That's the other question. But you look at the running back market last year, and there leads nothing that leads me to believe that this team would have to overpay for Saquon Barkley. It just doesn't happen in the NFL anymore. You saw Ezekiel Elliott get cut last year, Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Joe Mixon took a pay cut, Aaron Jones took a pay cut. And you look at who's available, it's simple economics. It's supply and demand. There's a ton of supply right now in the running back market, all at once. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon. There are so many running backs. So what you have is a running back market that doesn't materialize anyway, where people don't overpay for running backs anyway, and now you're going to put that many running backs into the free agent pool? The Eagles are not going to have to overpay for one of these guys. So I know the Saquon Barkley move, a lot of people, he's too injury prone. Way too injury prone. And I've talked to this last week. I think we talked about it on this show. It's running together because I talked about it this weekend on The Fanatic. I can't remember if we talked about it last week here. But you look at the last 3 seasons. DeAndre Swift has played 44 games. Saquon Barkley has played 45 games. So I'm not understanding why people would be okay paying DeAndre Swift to come back, but the moment the Saquon Barkley name is thrown out, oh, no, he's too injury prone. He's played more games than DeAndre Swift has played in the last 3 seasons. And I talked about how you've never seen DeAndre Swift get the amount of carries and touches that he got this past season in Philadelphia. So a lot of times when running backs get a career high in touches, they get hurt the next season. DeAndre Swift in 2021, the only other time he had over 200 touches, came back the next year, hurt after 3 games, only got double-digit carries 2 more times the entire season. I think the Saquon Barkley, if they were to do that move, I think it has a lot more upside than a DeAndre Swift does. And I don't think you're going to have to break the bank for him. I really don't. You could be talking about $1 million difference in cap number. $2 million max in cap space. That's nothing. When you have $43 million in cap space, $1 or $2 million isn't anything. But if they can't get a Saquon Barkley, could they go after a Josh Jacobs? An A.J. Dillon? Now, A.J. Dillon wouldn't necessarily be a big number. He wouldn't even be your number one, probably. But a nice change of pace back, a big back, something that I was begging for last year that they didn't have. And this is a common misconception here. So here's John saying, we don't run the ball. It's Kellen Moore. Come on. So that's a narrative that I do not agree with at all. And I think that that was something that got created because Mike McCarthy said, I want to run the damn ball, and Kellen Moore wants to light up the damn scoreboard. Well, then you look, in 2022, the Dallas Cowboys, with Kellen Moore calling the plays, had the top 6 in rushing attempts, not yards, attempts, top 6. They ran the ball 531 times with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. Last year under Mike McCarthy, they ran it 468. So a lot of this narrative is created because of Mike McCarthy's words, which were just untrue. And you look at what Kellen Moore did, 2022, number 6 in rushing attempts, number 9 in rushing offense. You go back to 2021, top 10 rushing offense. That narrative I'm not buying. Now, he didn't run the ball a lot in Los Angeles last year because they had a terrible offensive line. Their team was brutal. They were behind in a lot of games. But you go back to the Dallas years, the year he had the number 1 offense in the NFL, top 10 rushing offense. 2022, top 10 offense, top 10 rushing offense. So I think people need to stop with that narrative. Oh, Kellen Moore doesn't run the football. What do we need a running back for? It's not true. It's a narrative that was created from I don't know what, simply because Mike McCarthy said he doesn't want to run the ball, which just wasn't true. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Hopefully we get some breaking news today as the days go on. Let's just switch gears for 1 second. 76ers pick up a big win last night. Can't even say that with a straight face. They score 79 points and somehow win that game. That game was ugly. Ugly, but it was their first win without both Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. So I'll give them some credit for that. They're still in the top 6 right now. They're still in the top 6 of the Eastern Conference, which they're trying to do, but I've given up. Even with Embiid coming back, it's so hard, man. Then you got the Flyers, who are on a strong push to make the playoffs. The trade deadline came and went. They didn't really do much. They kept the core together. They didn't trade Scotty Lawton, which was something a lot of people were concerned about. They obviously didn't move on from Sean Couturier, who's their captain. But they come out of the trade deadline. We're all excited. They're on their playoff run, and they get crushed in Tampa. 7-0. But when it was 4-0 in the first period, John Tortorella gets tossed after complaining about a bad call, a couple bad calls, actually. And then he gives the Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not leaving. So now John Tortorella has been suspended for 2 games and fined $50,000. So, I don't know. We'll see what this does for the team. Sometimes team sees that their coach has their back like that. Maybe they come out and bounce back in a big way. I think they're back in action. When are the Fly Guys back in action? Because every one of these games matters right now for the Flyers, man. They're in that strong push to make the playoffs, which I can't wait for. They are back in action on Tuesday, I think. Yeah, so they got to play San Jose Sharks, who are one of the worst teams in the NHL. So let's hope they can get back in the winning column. Because you look at the playoff race right now, Fly Guys still sitting at number 3 in the Metro with 74 points, but the New York Islanders with 2 games in hand are only 2 points behind them. So that's going to be a tight race. And then in the wild card, they would be tied right now with the Tampa Bay Lightning for the top wild card spot. So it's a tight race. These games matter. These games matter. I want playoff hockey back. So we'll see, but they're exciting to watch. And I see people asking for a round 2. Let Big Sills know in the chat today when you're there. Tell him I want a piece. Tell Big Sills, Big Bills wants a piece. And him and I can go at it again because we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things these days. So you tell him in the chat, Big Bill wants a piece of Big Sills. So keep you updated on that. But as we end every Philly Sports Power Hour with a little Today in Sports History, March 11th, 1986. Oh, flexing and stepping coming after me. But March 11th, 1986, NFL Instant Replay was officially implemented for the first time. What a difference that has made over the last, 35 years. But 1986, that system, I believe, only lasted until the mid-90s. The system we are under now I think got implemented in 1999. But the first time they started using replay at all, March 11th, 1986. So all good. I'm laughing at the chat talking about Sills and me going at it. So, yeah, let them know. Let them know. But everybody, I appreciate you being here for this hour. We'll be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Unfortunately, no Legal Hands to the Face show tonight. I'm actually going to be on the best show ever for 97.5 The Fanatic with Ricky Batalico from 2 to 6. So I won't be able to make it back in time to do Legal Hands to the Face. So I'll be on the Fanatic tonight. But I'll be back here tomorrow at 10 o'clock for the Philly Sports Power Hour, hopefully reacting to some big free agent news from the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's see. Hit that like button for me. Hit that share button for me. And I'll talk to you tomorrow, 10 o'clock, right here on the Philly Sports Power Hour. And as always, go Birds.